want to let everyone know that this morning I will be speaking about abortion and pregnancy loss. If this topic is too triggering for you or too mature for the children who are with you, then please take care of yourselves. Please feel free to leave the sanctuary now. And please also know that your clergy here at Beth David, we are here to listen if you ever want to talk. I cannot believe that 35 years ago, I had more of a choice than I have today, one member of this congregation told me. I was 29 and pregnant, a pregnancy I desperately wanted, she explained. But at 16 weeks, I found out that the fetus had no abdominal wall, on top of a whole host of other abnormalities. I immediately consulted with leading OBGYNs and genetic specialists, each of whom explained that, quote, unless I had a strong religious belief, this was a pregnancy I should not continue because of serious health risks. They told me that I would most likely have a miscarriage later in the pregnancy with a high risk of damaging my uterus, so future pregnancies would be in jeopardy. And even if the baby was born alive, considering the fetal abnormalities, survival past a day or two was highly unlikely. As reality set in, I had a moment of being, realizing that this is happening to me. Nature can be so cruel, but this was just not a pregnancy meant to be. It was a devastating choice, but it was not the most difficult choice, and it was mine to make. My husband and I went on to have 2 children. They grew up at Beth David, and I am healthy. I chose a full life instead. Over the course of the High Holy Days, we have been exploring the theme of choosing life, and I am grateful to all of you who have told such a beautiful, diverse array of stories about what choosing life means to you, of treasuring each day, of protecting your health, of fighting for policies that would save lives, of making choices that affirm love, friendship, growth, and joy, even in the most difficult moments. This morning, I want to share a few more of your stories from members of this congregation who have given me permission to do so, about the stories of their lives, personally and professionally, that include a story of abortion. I'm grateful to them for sharing their stories, and I know that these are only a few of the abortion stories that our congregation could tell. It's probably not a surprise to many of you that the Jewish community is overwhelmingly supportive of reproductive justice and abortion rights. In Jewish law, the question of when life begins is considered too complex to have a black and white answer. But in most circumstances, a developing embryo or fetus is considered as a potential life, which has tremendous value, but is not the same as a full human life until the baby is born. This Jewish law is grounded in a view of the book of Exodus, is grounded in a verse of the book of Exodus that describes a woman who has a miscarriage after being pushed and injured by someone. In the straightforward Jewish reading, the miscarriage, while tragic, is treated as an injury to the woman's body, not a murder. And the act of pushing her is not considered a capital crime unless the woman herself dies from the injuries. When considering abortion, therefore, our sages also understand the fetus as precious, but not as a fully formed life. And because saving a life is the most important commandment in Judaism, Jewish law is clear about the requirement to perform an abortion when a pregnancy is endangering a person's life or well-being. It's worth noting that the same verse is in fact also important to the Christian understanding of when life begins. But Christian scholars interpret the verse very differently. The difference hinges on the interpretation of just one word, But that one word has led Judaism and Christianity to have very different views about abortion. It's the stuff of fascinating interfaith dialogue with my beloved Christian colleagues and friends. I respect their readings of our shared texts and the diverse range of Christian views on this issue. But when our public policy is being shaped by Christian religious doctrine, we as a Jewish community need to bring our voices to the public square. Perhaps you have heard about a synagogue that is suing the state of Florida over Florida's new law banning abortions after 16 weeks. The synagogue is arguing that the law violates the right to freedom of religion because in Jewish law, abortion is not only permitted, but actually required if a pregnancy is endangering a person's life or health, mental or physical. In a recent Pew study, 83% of all Jews believe that abortion should be legal in all or most cases, the largest percentage of any religious group. Our Reformed Jewish movement has been outspoken in its activism in support of reproductive justice for over 50 years. Women of Reformed Judaism first passed a resolution in support of abortion rights in 1967, 7 years before Roe v. Wade. This advocacy has continued until the present day. And reproductive justice is at the center of the work of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, our movement social justice office in Washington, D.C., with efforts like organizing our movement to participate in marches and signing onto an amicus brief in a Supreme Court case on cases including Dobbs, the most recent case that overturned Roe v. Wade. It may be familiar to many of you, to some of you, to talk about reproductive justice as a Jewish value. But this High Holy Day season, we are focusing on the value of choosing life. And so I want to talk about reproductive justice in that framework, even though I know that this choice of language feels counterintuitive and probably also uncomfortable for some of you. The stories that I'm sharing with you today, stories of members of this congregation who had abortions or helped others obtain an abortion, are, like the other stories that we have been hearing over these High Holy Days, fundamentally stories about choosing life. We're used to thinking of abortion as the opposite of choosing life because the rhetoric that we use in this country around abortion and reproductive justice more broadly has become so politicized and polarized. We typically hear only one religious view about abortion, a view held by some branches of Christianity. We're used to thinking of the debate as a question of religious values versus secular values, morality versus freedom, life versus choice. But Judaism offers a perspective on abortion that transcends these binaries and differs from the dominant religious voices on abortion. We as a Jewish community cannot simply allow other voices to lay claim to a language that is also sacred to us. Judaism is at its core a religion of life. The message to treasure and honor life is core to all of Torah, including the Torah that calls us to stand up for reproductive justice. Abortion can be a way of choosing life because Judaism commands us to protect first and foremost the life of the pregnant person. Abortion can be a way of choosing life because Judaism teaches us that all life, including the lives of the most vulnerable people, are equally holy. And abortion can be a way of choosing life because Judaism teaches that choosing life is about the quality and the dignity of our lives. I want to tell you a story of two medical professionals in our congregation. Ben Kendall, well known and beloved to many of you, introduced as the prophet Isaiah just a few minutes ago, has been a member of this congregation since 1943. His wife, Ginny, a passionate pro-choice advocate in her own right, has been a member since her own childhood. Kat Clayson is a new member of our congregation who first came to Beth David during the pandemic. Ben started medical school in 1951, more than 20 years before Roe legalized abortion. And so for the first decades of his training and career, As an obstetrician gynecologist, he witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of banning abortion. Women who died, who suffered hemorrhage and infection following botched abortions. A 13-year-old girl whose life was saved only by performing a hysterectomy. In many but not all cases, Ben describes, wealthier families were able to travel to find safe treatment. But poor families, girls who could not safely talk to their families, and others who were vulnerable were at the highest risk. In 1969, 4 years before Roe, Ben and a colleague of his at Jefferson Hospital found a way to change the hospital's abortion policy. At great risk to their own careers, but in order to save lives, they found a way for their department to legally perform abortions. Kat's story is the story of a different generation of healthcare providers, a nurse practitioner, a military veteran, and currently a doctoral student with a specialty in women's health. She has witnessed the way that our new restrictive abortion laws can, in her words, sometimes tie the hands of medical professionals who are trying to save lives. In other states, her colleagues have had to call their lawyer for advice or refuse to provide care when abortion is necessary as health care. But what she describes seeing most of all is how the inequalities of our medical system endanger the lives and health of our most vulnerable patients. In a healthcare system that is, in her words, failing miserably at providing maternal health for people of color, people are forced into riskier health decisions when some options are inaccessible to those who cannot pay. And she sees the consequences and the trauma that can result as well. Ben and Kat's stories and their life-saving work are reminders about why abortion can be choosing life. Because abortion teaches us that the life of the pregnant person is primary and that all lives are equally holy. In Judaism, each and every life is created in God's image, B'Tselem Elohim. Each and every life is worthy of protection, and we are called to stand up for the life and the dignity, in particular, of those who are most vulnerable. At the same time, I want to be clear that most of our community's abortion stories are not stories where a person's life or health is at risk. And we need Jewish language for talking about what it means to choose an abortion in these moments too. When abortion is a choice about how we want to plan or live our lives, or our beliefs about when we do or do not want to bring a life into this world. For us, the abortion was a relatively minor medical procedure, another member of this congregation described to me, not to minimize my wife's pain or the day or two of recovery. Afterward, we mainly felt relief and returned to our busy lives without any regrets or misgivings. Rather, as I recall, our experience was part of the flow of our lives. When we realized my wife was pregnant, she was just my girlfriend then, it didn't take us long to agree on an abortion. Given my status as a student, approaching an uncertain job market, and the short time we had been together, it made no sense to us to begin a family. We were puzzled about how the pregnancy could have occurred, since we were generally careful about contraception, but we resolved to take even greater care going forward. Later, when I had a job and my wife had some space in her career, she proposed that we start a family. Our first child was born the next year, and our second one 3 years later. We are now grandparents. We have rarely talked about our abortion since, though we would always, in social and political contexts, acknowledge that my wife was among the 1/4 to 1/3 of women in the United States who have had an abortion. Human beings are created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, which means, as Rabbi Yitzhak Greenberg puts it, that, quote, every human being is born with God-like capacities for consciousness, relationship, and love, vitality, and freedom. The Jewish commandment to choose life is a call to protect and honor these godly qualities within every human being. Choosing life, Rabbi Greenberg writes, is not only about increasing the quality of life, but also about enhancing the quality and the dignity of life. As my colleague, Rabbi Emily Langowitz, who I'm honored will be teaching at Beth David via Zoom later this year, abortion should not be seen as an assault on the divine creative power of the body, but as a way of ensuring that the process of pregnancy be sacred both for the future created being and for its creator. When we let people make their own decisions about their reproductive lives, we are honoring life and choosing life. The stories of our lives are themselves holy, and our ability to shape our own stories and live is holy also. Here's one of my regrets, another Beth David member told me. Early on in my career, I was working with a country doctor, the nicest guy in the world. He was so gentle with his patients, and he taught me a lot. But one day, a woman in her late 20s came to see him. She had been his patient all her life. She had 3 children, and she was pregnant again. Talking to him, she burst into tears and said, "I can't do this. We have no money, and I can't support another child." And he said, "Of course you can, and you will." Rabbi, I wish I had had the courage to run after her and talk with her in the parking lot before she drove off. I've thought so often about what I wish I had said to her. I wish I had told her that she had options and that she didn't need to continue a pregnancy that wasn't good for her or her family. I've been thinking too about what I want to say to all of you for whom abortion is part of your life and your family's life. I guess the answer I came to is a little bit predictable for a rabbi. I'd like to give you a blessing. I know that your stories are many and varied, but I want to honor the sanctity of your decisions and your lives. I'm so honored now to share the words of my colleague, Rabbi Stephanie Crawley, with a few adaptations. Rabbi Crawley wrote this beautiful blessing and shared it with her congregation, Temple Micah, in Washington, D.C. on Rosh Hashanah. This is a blessing for any of you who have had an abortion or who have aided an abortion in any way, as a medical professional, as a volunteer, as a supportive friend. Mishaberach Imotenu, God of our mothers, bless these brave ones who come before you. Be with them now as you were with our mothers. God of Sarah, who aided her to have a child because she longed for life. Be with them now. God of Rachel, who suffered and suffered for a child and then died while giving birth. Ensure that no one is forced into the same reality. Be with them now. God of Dinah, do not abandon us when we have had our bodies stolen from us through violence and subjugation. Be with them now. God of Yocheved, the mother of Moses, help us maintain the ability to bring children into the world only when we are able to keep them safe, only when we've decided that the world is right. Be with them now. God of Hannah, who thought she had worth only because of her womb, teach us all to see the value in our wholeness. Be with them now. Bless their holy bodies and bless their decisions, the ones they had the ability to make, the ones they fought to make possible, the ones that could result in blessing, and the ones made in the embrace of freedom. May they always know agency and dignity and love. May this community never fail to rise to their support. And be with those who stand beside them in courage too, who lend their voices and their funds, who drive to clinics and accompany them inside, who shout over protesters, who ensure care and safety. Be with them now. And be with us all now. Give us the strength, the resolve to speak truth to power, to continue fighting to support women. Help us create systems of justice that serve every person, that center the souls that belong to bodies that others seek to ban. In this new year, help us build a new, just world, a world birthed of freedom and care. And let us say, Amen.